Sometimes the most extraordinary moments emerge from the most ordinary struggles. In a world where children face battles that adults can barely comprehend, where cruelty masquerades as childhood games, and where dreams are crushed before they even have a chance to bloom, it takes just one person believing in the impossible to change everything. This is not a story about perfection or fairy tale endings. This is a story about resilience, about a father's unwavering love, and about two little girls whose rhythm would ultimately silence every voice that tried to diminish their light. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The autumn rain drummed against the windows of Jefferson Elementary like impatient fingers, each drop echoing through the empty hallways as the final bell rang across Millbrook Township. Most children rushed toward waiting cars or yellow buses, their backpacks bouncing against their shoulders as they escaped into the freedom of after-school hours. But in the shadowy corner near the gymnasium entrance, two small figures pressed themselves against the cold brick wall, hoping to become invisible until the coast was clear. Maya and Sophie Martinez were identical twins in every way except for the tiny scar above Maya's left eyebrow, a remnant from a playground accident when they were 4. At 8 years old, they moved through the world like mirror images, finishing each other's sentences and sharing secrets in a language only they understood. Their dark hair was always braided in matching patterns, their school uniforms pressed and clean despite their father's struggles with the morning routine. But today, like so many days before, their matching brown eyes held the weight of fear that no child should carry. The sound of approaching footsteps made both girls shrink deeper into the shadows. Through the glass doors, they could see Ashley Chun and her group of followers approaching, their designer sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Ashley was everything the twins were not: confident, popular, and blessed with parents who never missed a school function or forgot to pack organic lunches in expensive containers. Her laugh rang through the hallway like a bell that announced trouble for anyone unfortunate enough to be in her path. Maya grabbed Sophie's hand instinctively, their matching friendship bracelets tangling together as they pressed against the wall. They had learned to read the warning signs, the way Ashley's voice rose when she spotted them, the excited whispers that followed, the circle that would inevitably form around them like predators surrounding their prey. Today would be no different, except for the fact that their father was running late, stuck in traffic after finishing his shift at the auto repair shop across town. David Martinez had been a single father for 3 years now, ever since his wife Elena had died in a car accident that shattered their family into pieces he was still trying to put back together. At 32, he carried the exhaustion of a man trying to be both mother and father, working long hours at Rodriguez Auto to pay the bills while ensuring his daughters never doubted they were loved. His hands were permanently stained with grease. His back ached from bending over engines all day, and his heart carried a constant worry about whether he was enough for the two little girls who meant everything to him. The twins had inherited their mother's grace and Elena's passion for music and movement. In their small apartment above the bakery on Main Street, they would dance to whatever played on their father's old radio, transforming their cramped living room into a stage where they could forget about everything that hurt. Elena had been a dance instructor before Maya and Sophie were born, and though David had no formal training, he encouraged their natural talent with the same fierce devotion he brought to everything involving his daughters. But talent meant nothing in the cruel ecosystem of elementary school, where being different was a sin and being poor was evidence of some moral failing. The twins' second-hand uniforms, their father's old pickup truck, and their inability to afford the latest gadgets made them easy targets for children who had learned cruelty at their parents' dinner tables. Ashley Chun had appointed herself the unofficial judge of who belonged and who didn't, and the Martinez twins had been sentenced to exile from the moment they transferred to Jefferson Elementary. As the group approached, Maya and Sophie could hear the familiar taunts beginning to form. Ashley's voice carried clearly through the glass doors, her words sharp enough to cut through the autumn air. The twins knew better than to run. That would only make things worse. They had learned to endure, to wait for it to pass, to protect each other with the fierce loyalty that only siblings shared. But today felt different somehow, heavier with the weight of accumulated hurts and the growing realization that this pattern might never end. The gymnasium doors swung open with a metallic groan, and Ashley stepped through with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. Her followers flanked her like bodyguards, their matching smirks revealing the anticipation of entertainment. At someone else's expense. The twins had nowhere to run now, trapped between the approaching group and the wall that offered no escape. Maya stepped slightly in front of Sophie, a gesture so subtle that only her sister would notice, but one that spoke volumes about the protective instinct that had kept them afloat in this sea of childhood cruelty. The confrontation began as it always did, with Ashley's voice dripping with false sweetness as she addressed the twins. Her words were carefully chosen to sound innocent to any passing adult, while landing like physical blows on their intended targets. She commented on their matching outfits with a tone that made it clear this was something to be mocked rather than admired. She wondered aloud why they always sat together at lunch, as if their bond was somehow shameful rather than beautiful. Each word was designed to isolate them further, to make them question whether the love they shared was something to be hidden, rather than celebrated. Sophie's eyes began to fill with tears, but Maya squeezed her hand tighter, a silent reminder that they would survive this together as they had survived everything else. The twins had developed their own system of communication. During these encounters, small gestures that offered comfort and strength when words failed them. They had learned that showing emotion only encouraged their tormentors, but they had also learned that they could find courage in each other's presence, even when the world seemed determined to break them down. The taunting escalated as more children gathered, drawn by the magnetic pull of drama that pervaded school hallways everywhere. Some joined in with their own cruel observations, while others simply watched with the guilty fascination of witnesses who knew they should intervene but lacked the courage to risk becoming targets themselves. The twins found themselves surrounded by a circle of their peers, isolated despite being in a crowd, facing the kind of systematic cruelty that adults often dismissed as normal childhood behavior. It was then that Ashley made her fatal mistake, the comment that would change everything. That followed. With a smirk that revealed her certainty that she held all the power, she suggested that perhaps the twins should entertain everyone with one of their weird dances, the ones they practiced in their sad little apartment above the smelly bakery. Her voice carried the kind of venom that only children could master, turning something beautiful into a source of shame with surgical precision. The twins' secret had been exposed with the casual cruelty of someone who understood exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. Their dancing, their private joy, their connection to their mother's memory, had been weaponized against them by someone who had never experienced loss or struggle or the need to find light in dark places. Maya felt something shift inside her chest, not the familiar ache of humiliation, but something fiercer and more dangerous. But before either twin could respond, the sound of squealing tires cut through the afternoon air, followed by the distinctive rumble of an engine that had seen better days. Through the windows, they could see their father's faded blue pickup truck pulling into the circular drive with more urgency than usual. David Martinez had finished his shift early, driven by the nagging feeling that his daughters needed him, the same instinct that had guided him through 3 years of single parenthood. David emerged from the truck like a man on a mission, his work clothes still bearing the evidence of a long day spent coaxing life back into broken engines. His hair was disheveled, his face showed the strain of constant worry, but his eyes held the fierce determination of someone who would move mountains to protect what mattered most. He had learned to read his daughter's moods from across a room, to interpret the subtle signs that indicated when their day had been marked by cruelty rather than kindness. As he approached the school entrance, he could see through the glass doors the cluster of children gathered around two familiar small figures. The protective instinct that had guided him through countless sleepless nights and endless worries flared to life with an intensity that surprised even him. These were his girls, his reason for getting up every morning, his motivation for every sacrifice he had ever made. No one had the right to make them feel small or worthless or alone. The twins saw their father approaching and felt a complex mixture of relief and embarrassment wash over them. They wanted his protection desperately, but they also feared that his intervention might make things worse for them tomorrow when he wouldn't be there to shield them from the consequences. The social dynamics of elementary school were treacherous enough without adding the complication of parental involvement, but they had reached a point where pride mattered less than survival. David pushed through the glass doors with the quiet authority of someone who had faced real adversity and emerged stronger. His presence immediately shifted the energy in the hallway, causing several of the gathered children to step backward instinctively. There was something about his calm intensity that suggested he was not someone to be trifled with, despite his worn clothing and working-class appearance. He moved through the crowd with purpose, his eyes focused solely on his daughters and the obvious distress written across their faces. Ashley Chun found herself face to face with a man whose quiet strength made her usual tactics seem suddenly inadequate. This was not a parent who could be dismissed or intimidated, not someone who would be impressed by her family's social status or her carefully cultivated image of innocence. David Martinez looked at her with the steady gaze of someone who understood exactly what was happening and would not be deterred by excuses or deflection. The confrontation that followed was unlike anything the gathered children had witnessed before. David did not raise his voice or resort to threats, but his words carried a weight that silenced the hallway completely. He spoke directly to Ashley and her followers, his tone respectful but uncompromising as he explained that his daughters deserved to attend school without fear or harassment. He made it clear that he understood exactly what had been happening and that it would not continue under any circumstances. But it was what happened next that would be talked about for weeks afterward, the moment that transformed the twins from victims into something altogether more powerful. As their father stood between them and their tormentors, Maya and Sophie exchanged a look that spoke volumes about their shared decision to stop hiding their light under the bushel of other people's expectations. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. They had spent months allowing their joy to be diminished by fear, but something about their father's courage gave them permission to reclaim what belonged to them. Without warning or announcement, the twins stepped forward and began to move. It started as a simple sway, a gentle rhythm that seemed to emerge from nowhere and everywhere at once. But within moments, their movement had transformed into something extraordinary, a dance that combined technical precision with raw emotional power in a way that defied their young age. They moved as one person split into two bodies, their synchronization so perfect that it seemed almost supernatural. The hallway fell completely silent as everyone present realized they were witnessing something rare and beautiful. The twins' dance was not a performance in the traditional sense, but rather an expression of everything they had been forced to keep hidden: their joy, their connection to each other, their memories of their mother, their resilience in the face of cruelty. Every movement told a story. Every gesture revealed a depth of feeling that left their audience speechless. Maya and Sophie danced as if their lives depended on it, which in many ways they did. This was their declaration of independence from the tyranny of other people's opinions, their refusal to be diminished by those who could not understand the beauty they carried within themselves. They danced for their mother, whose spirit lived on in every graceful movement. They danced for their father, whose love had given them the strength to survive. But most importantly, they danced for themselves, reclaiming their right to exist fully and joyfully in a world that had tried to make them small. The dance lasted only minutes, but its impact was immediate and profound. When the twins finally came to rest, breathing slightly hard but glowing with the satisfaction of authentic expression, the hallway remained silent for several long moments. Even Ashley Chun seemed at a loss for words, her usual arsenal of cutting remarks rendered meaningless by what she had just witnessed. The other children stared with a mixture of awe and shame, suddenly aware of how small their cruelty seemed in comparison to the magnitude of what they had just experienced. David Martinez felt his chest swell with pride as he watched his daughters transform from frightened victims into confident young artists in the space of a few extraordinary minutes. This was what Alina would have wanted for them, not just survival, but the courage to thrive despite the obstacles placed in their path. He had spent 3 years trying to protect them from the world's harshness, but now he realized that his greatest gift to them might be teaching them to transform that harshness into something beautiful. The aftermath of the twins' impromptu performance rippled through Jefferson Elementary like stones thrown into still water. Word spread quickly through the building that something remarkable had happened in the gymnasium hallway, something that challenged every assumption about who mattered and who didn't. Teachers began to take notice of the quiet girls who had been easy to overlook, while students found themselves reconsidering their participation in the casual cruelty that had defined the school's social hierarchy. Ashley Chun discovered that her power derived largely from others' willingness to follow her lead, and that willingness had been shaken by what she had witnessed. It became harder to rally support for targeting the twins when everyone remembered how small and petty their previous behavior seemed in comparison to the grace and talent the sisters had displayed. The social ecosystem that had seemed so fixed and immutable began to shift in ways that surprised everyone involved. For Maya and Sophie, the decision to dance in front of their tormentors marked a turning point in their understanding of their own power. They had spent months believing that their differences made them vulnerable, but they were beginning to realize that those same differences might actually be their greatest strength. The dancing that had once been their private refuge was becoming a bridge between their inner world and the larger community that had seemed so hostile. David found himself fielding phone calls from teachers and administrators who had suddenly discovered his daughter's existence after months of overlooking them entirely. The twins' impromptu performance had revealed not just their talent, but also the failure of the adults around them to recognize and nurture that talent. There were apologies and promises of better protection, but David knew that real change would require more than words from authority figures who had been absent when his daughters needed them most. As the family drove home that evening in their old pickup truck, the twins chattering excitedly about the events of the day, David felt a complex mixture of emotions churning in his chest. Pride in his daughter's courage was mixed with anger at the system that had failed to protect them, hope for the future combined with worry about the challenges that still lay ahead. He knew that one moment of triumph, however spectacular, would not erase the weeks of torment that had preceded it. But something fundamental had shifted in the dynamic between the twins and their world. They had discovered that their vulnerability could be transformed into strength, that their pain could be alchemized into beauty, that their love for each other could become a force powerful enough to change minds and hearts. The dance had been more than entertainment. It had been a declaration of their right to exist fully and authentically in a world that had tried to diminish them. The evening routine in their small apartment above the bakery took on a different quality that night. As David helped the twins with their homework and prepared their simple dinner, there was an undercurrent of excitement that had been absent for months. The girls spoke animatedly about their plans for future dances, about the expressions on their classmates' faces, about the feeling of moving together in perfect harmony while the world watched in amazement. Alina's presence seemed especially strong that night, as if her spirit had been awakened by her daughter's decision to embrace the gift she had given them. David found himself telling stories about their mother's dancing, sharing memories that had been too painful to revisit in the immediate aftermath of her death. The twins listened with rapt attention, hungry for any connection to the woman whose absence had shaped their lives in profound ways. As he tucked his daughters into the twin beds that dominated their small shared bedroom, David reflected on the events of the day and what they might mean for the family's future. The twins had shown remarkable courage in choosing to dance despite their fear, but he knew that courage alone would not be enough to protect them from all the challenges that lay ahead. They would need support, guidance, and opportunities to develop their obvious talent if they were going to transform this moment of triumph into lasting change. The questions that kept David awake long after his daughters had fallen asleep were complex and challenging. How could he provide the training and opportunities his daughters needed on his limited income? What responsibilities did he have to nurture their talent while also protecting them from the pressures and disappointments that often accompanied artistic pursuits? How could he ensure that their newfound confidence would not be crushed by future setbacks or failures? But underneath all the practical concerns and parental worries, there was a growing sense of possibility that David had not felt since Elena's death. His daughters had shown him that resilience could be beautiful, that strength could emerge from struggle, that love could indeed conquer the forces that sought to divide and diminish. They had reminded him that some battles were worth fighting not just for survival, but for the right to flourish despite everything that stood in opposition. The next morning would bring new challenges and opportunities as word of the twins' performance continued to spread throughout the community. There would be difficult conversations with school officials, potential conflicts with other parents, and the ongoing work of helping two young girls navigate a world that was both cruel and beautiful in equal measure. But for now, in the quiet of their small apartment with his daughters sleeping peacefully nearby, David Martinez allowed himself the hope that perhaps the worst was behind them. The autumn rain had stopped during the night, and morning light filtered through the windows of their modest home with the promise of clearer skies ahead. David rose early as always, beginning the familiar routine of preparing breakfast and packing lunches while his daughters slept. But today there was something different. In his movements, a lightness that had been absent for months. Yesterday had changed something fundamental in their family's story, transforming them from victims of circumstance into active agents of their own destiny. Maya and Sophie woke with an energy that had been missing from their mornings for weeks. They chattered excitedly as they prepared for school, their voices carrying a confidence that made David's heart swell with pride and relief. They were still the same girls who had been bullied and marginalized, but they were no longer defined solely by that experience. They had tasted their own power and found it sweet enough to pursue despite the risks involved. The drive to Jefferson Elementary felt different that morning, charged with anticipation rather than dread. The twins sat in the back seat of the pickup truck, holding hands as they always did, but with an excitement rather than fear driving their connection. They had crossed a threshold the day before, moving from passive recipients of others' cruelty to active creators of their own narrative. The school building that had once seemed like a prison now felt like a stage where anything might be possible. As they approached the familiar brick facade of Jefferson Elementary, David found himself wondering what kind of reception awaited his daughters. Would yesterday's triumph prove to be an isolated moment of glory, or would it mark the beginning of a fundamental shift in how the twins were perceived and treated? He had learned not to expect too much from institutions that had already failed his family, but he couldn't help hoping that perhaps some minds had been changed by what they had witnessed. The twins emerged from the truck with their heads held high, their matching backpacks slung over their shoulders with newfound confidence. They hugged their father goodbye with the enthusiasm of children who were excited rather than afraid to face the day ahead. David watched them walk through the school entrance with a mixture of pride and protective concern, knowing that he had given them all the tools at his disposal, but unable to shield them completely from whatever lay ahead. Inside Jefferson Elementary, the atmosphere was subtly different than it had been just 24 hours earlier. Teachers who had barely noticed the Martinez twins now found their eyes drawn to the girls, who had created such a stir with their unexpected performance. Students who had previously ignored or tormented them now watched with a combination of curiosity and newfound respect. The social dynamics that had seemed so fixed and immutable were already beginning to shift in response to the twins' courage. Maya and Sophie navigated the familiar hallways with a grace that extended beyond their physical movements into their interactions with classmates and teachers. They spoke up in class discussions they had previously avoided, volunteered for activities they had once feared to join, and met the eyes of those who had previously made them feel invisible. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable to anyone who had been paying attention to their previous struggles. The real test would come at recess, when the informal social hierarchies of elementary school exerted their strongest influence over children's behavior. This was when alliances were formed and broken, when popularity was currency and difference was punished with swift and merciless efficiency. It was here that the twins would discover whether yesterday's performance had truly changed anything, or simply provided a temporary respite from their ongoing persecution. As the lunch bell rang and students began filing toward the cafeteria and playground, Maya and Sophie exchanged a look that spoke volumes about their shared determination to face whatever awaited them with courage and dignity. They had tasted the power of their own authenticity and found it more satisfying than the false safety of hiding their light under the bushel of others' expectations. Whatever happened next, they would meet it as themselves, fully and completely, with all the grace and strength their mother had given them and their father had nurtured despite overwhelming odds. The playground at Jefferson Elementary stretched out like a battlefield under the pale October sun, its asphalt marked with the invisible territories that children claimed through unspoken rules and ruthless enforcement. Picnic tables became kingdoms where the popular kids held court, while the swings served as neutral ground for those brave enough to venture into contested space. Maya and Sophie Martinez walked through this carefully mapped social landscape with the deliberate steps of soldiers who had finally learned they possessed weapons of their own. 3 days had passed since their impromptu performance in the gymnasium hallway, and the ripple effects continued to spread through the school community like waves from a stone thrown into still water. Teachers whispered in faculty meetings about the quiet transformation they had witnessed in the Martinez twins, while parents found themselves fielding unexpected questions from their own children about talent and kindness and what it meant to truly see someone who had been invisible. Before, Mrs. Patterson, the third-grade teacher who had barely noticed the twins during their first month at Jefferson Elementary, now found herself watching Maya and Sophie with the guilty attention of someone who realized she had overlooked something precious. During morning reading time, she had observed the way they shared books effortlessly, finishing each other's thoughts about characters and plot developments, with an intuitive understanding that spoke to years of intimate conversation. Their homework had always been completed meticulously, but now she noticed the creativity in their answers, the careful attention to detail that revealed minds capable of much more than she had previously recognized. The transformation was most visible during music class, where Mr. Henderson had struggled for weeks to engage his students in anything more ambitious than basic rhythm exercises. The twins had always participated quietly, following along without drawing attention to themselves or demonstrating any particular aptitude that might distinguish them from their classmates. But now they moved with a confidence that infected the entire room, their natural sense of timing and spatial awareness evident in every gesture as they helped other children find the beat that had previously eluded them. Ashley Chun watched these developments with the keen eye of someone whose entire identity was built on maintaining her position at the top of the elementary school social hierarchy. She had spent years cultivating her image as the arbiter of what was cool and what was worthy of ridicule, but the twins' performance had challenged the very foundations of her power structure. It was one thing to mock someone for being different when that difference seemed like weakness, but quite another to maintain that mockery when the difference had revealed itself to be extraordinary talent. The lunchroom buzzed with conversations that Ashley could not control, discussions about dancing and talent shows and whether Jefferson Elementary should start some kind of performing arts program that would give students like the Martinez twins a proper outlet for their abilities. Several of her former followers had begun sitting closer to the twins during lunch, drawn by curiosity about what other hidden talents might be discovered if they looked beyond the surface judgments that had previously guided their social choices. David Martinez had noticed the change in his daughter's demeanor the moment they climbed into his truck after school that first day following their performance. Their chatter was animated rather than subdued, filled with stories about classmates who had approached them with questions about dancing and teachers who had suddenly begun calling on them during class discussions. But he also recognized the weight of new expectations in their voices, the pressure that came with being seen as something special rather than simply surviving as something ignored. That evening, as he helped the twins with their homework at the small kitchen table that served multiple purposes in their cramped apartment, David found himself grappling with questions that had no easy answers. Maya had asked whether they would be expected to dance again, whether the attention they were receiving would fade if they failed to live up to whatever image people had formed of them based on that one spontaneous moment. Sophie had wondered aloud whether their mother would have been proud of their performance, a question that landed in David's chest with the force of a physical blow. Elena had died when the twins were only 5 years old, too young to fully understand the magnitude of their loss, but old enough to remember the woman who had filled their small apartment with music and movement and unconditional love. She had been a professional dancer before marriage and motherhood redirected her energies toward building a family, but she had never lost her passion for the art form that had defined her youth. David often caught glimpses of Elena in his daughters' movements, genetic memory expressing itself through gesture and grace that seemed too sophisticated for their young age. The phone call that changed everything came on a Thursday evening while David was washing dishes and the twins were practicing their spelling words at the kitchen table. The voice on the other end belonged to Catherine Wells, a woman whose name David recognized from local newspaper articles about arts education and community development. She identified herself as the director of the Millbrook Community Arts Center, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing affordable access to music, dance, and theater instruction for families who might not otherwise be able to afford such opportunities. Catherine explained that she had heard about the twins' performance through her network of contacts within the local education system, and she was calling to invite Maya and Sophie to audition for the center's youth dance program. The program offered full scholarships to students who demonstrated both talent and financial need, providing professional instruction in various dance styles, along with opportunities to perform in community productions and regional competitions. The catch, if it could be called that, was that acceptance into the program required a serious commitment from both students and parents, including regular attendance at classes and rehearsals that would significantly impact the family's already tight schedule. David found himself gripping the phone with white knuckles as Catherine described the opportunities that might be available to his daughters if they were accepted into the program. The instruction they would receive could provide a foundation for future artistic endeavors, whether as a hobby that enriched their lives or as preparation for more serious study at the high school and college levels. There would be performances that could build their confidence and showcase their abilities to larger audiences, connections with other young dancers who shared their passion, and access to choreographers and teachers who could help them develop whatever natural talent they possessed. But David also heard the unspoken implications in Catherine's carefully chosen words. The expectations and pressures that would come with being identified as serious dance students, rather than simply children who enjoyed moving to music. There would be costs beyond the tuition that was being waived, expenses for appropriate clothing and shoes and transportation to rehearsals and performances that might stretch his already tight budget to the breaking point. More importantly, there would be emotional costs for his daughters if they discovered that their moment of playground triumph did not translate into the sustained excellence required for formal dance training. The twins had been listening to their father's side of the conversation with growing excitement, their spelling words forgotten as they recognized that something significant was being discussed. When David finally hung up the phone and turned to face them, he saw in their eyes the same hunger for possibility that had driven Elena to pursue her own dance training despite her family's financial struggles and social expectations. It was a look that spoke to dreams larger than their current circumstances, aspirations that required courage and sacrifice and faith in outcomes that could not be guaranteed. David sat down at the kitchen table with his daughters and explained Catherine's offer in terms they could understand, emphasizing both the opportunities and the challenges that would come with serious dance training. He wanted them to understand that this would not be like the casual dancing they enjoyed in their living room, that formal instruction would require discipline and persistence and the willingness to accept criticism as part of the learning process. There would be other students who had been dancing longer, teachers who expected professional behavior even from young children, and performances that would demand precision rather than simply self-expression. Maya and Sophie listened with the intense focus they brought to everything that truly mattered to them, asking questions that revealed both their excitement and their understanding of the serious nature of the opportunity being presented. They wanted to know whether they would dance together or separately, whether their father would be able to attend their performances, whether the other students would be friendly, or if they would face the same kind of social challenges that had made their school experience so difficult. Their questions revealed a maturity born from hardship, an awareness that good things often came with hidden costs that had to be carefully considered. The audition was scheduled for the following Saturday morning at the Community Arts Center, a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Millbrook that had been transformed into studios and performance spaces through the dedication of volunteers and the vision of people who believed that art could change lives. David spent the week helping his daughters prepare, not through formal training that he was unqualified to provide, but by encouraging them to practice the movements that came naturally and reminding them that they had already proven their ability to dance with power and authenticity. Friday night found the Martinez family gathered in their small living room, the coffee table pushed against the wall to create space for the twins to move freely. David had tuned his old radio to a classical music station, and Maya and Sophie danced together with the easy synchronization that had amazed their school audience just a week earlier. But tonight there was a different quality to their movement, a consciousness of being observed and evaluated that added both tension and focus to their familiar routines. Elena's presence seemed especially strong that evening, as if her spirit was gathered close to witness this crucial moment in her daughter's artistic development. David found himself telling stories about their mother's own auditions and performances, sharing memories that helped the twins understand that the nervousness they were feeling was a normal part of pursuing something that mattered deeply. Elena had often said that butterflies in the stomach were simply proof that what you were doing was important enough to care about, a perspective that helped reframe anxiety as excitement rather than fear. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that October sometimes offered, the air sharp with the promise of winter, but still gentle enough to suggest that good things were possible. David helped the twins dress in their best clothes, simple outfits that were clean and neat, even if they lacked the designer labels that marked prosperity in their community. Maya and Sophie had braided each other's hair with extra care, their movements careful and deliberate as they prepared for what felt like the most important day of their young lives. The drive to the community art center took them through parts of Millbrook that David rarely visited. Neighborhoods where the houses were larger and the cars were newer, and the very sidewalks seemed to whisper of opportunities that had always felt beyond his family's reach. But as they pulled into the parking lot of the converted warehouse, David felt a surge of determination that surprised him with its intensity. His daughters deserved every chance to develop their gifts, regardless of their family's economic circumstances or social status. The arts center buzzed with activity as families arrived for various auditions and classes, children of all ages moving through the corridors with the easy confidence of those who had grown up surrounded by artistic instruction. Maya and Sophie pressed close to their father as they navigated the unfamiliar environment, their eyes wide as they observed dancers warming up in hallway spaces and heard the sound of piano music drifting from closed studio doors. This was a world that operated according to rules they had never learned, populated by people who spoke in languages of technique and artistry that felt both foreign and somehow deeply familiar. Catherine Wells met them in the main lobby, a woman in her 50s whose own background as a professional dancer was evident in her posture and the graceful economy of her movements. She welcomed the Martinez family with genuine warmth, taking time to put the twins at ease with questions about their school and their favorite types of music rather than jumping immediately into technical assessments. Her approach revealed years of experience working with children who were talented but untrained, nervous but eager to prove themselves worthy of the opportunities being offered. The audition itself took place in a studio lined with mirrors and equipped with bars along the walls, a space that seemed to expand infinitely in all directions through the reflections that surrounded the twins as they began to move. Catherine had asked them to perform something that felt natural and comfortable, without specific requirements or restrictions that might inhibit their instinctive responses to the music she would provide. Maya and Sophie found themselves in the center of the room, holding hands briefly before beginning the dance that had emerged spontaneously in their school hallway just days earlier. But this performance was different from their playground triumph. Informed by the awareness that they were being evaluated by someone who understood dance in ways their school audience never could. The twins moved with the same natural synchronization that had amazed their classmates, but now there was a consciousness of technique underlying their instinctive grace, attention to line and space and rhythm that spoke to potential waiting to be developed through proper instruction. Catherine watched with the trained eye of someone who could see not just what was present, but what might be possible with time and dedication and expert guidance. When the music ended and the twins came to rest in the center of the mirrored studio, breathing slightly hard but glowing with the satisfaction of movement well executed, Catherine remained silent for several long moments. Her expression was thoughtful rather than immediately revealing, the look of someone processing what she had witnessed through the filter of years of experience with young dancers at various stages of development. David found himself holding his breath as he waited for her assessment, aware that this moment might determine whether his daughter's artistic dreams would flourish or fade into pleasant memories of childhood enthusiasm. Catherine's feedback, when it finally came, was both encouraging and realistic in the way that only experienced teachers could manage. She praised the twins' natural sense of rhythm and their intuitive understanding of how to share space and create visual harmony through coordinated movement. Their emotional connection to the music was evident and powerful, she explained, a quality that could not be taught but formed the foundation for everything else that might be developed through technical training. However, she also noted areas where formal instruction would be necessary if they hoped to progress beyond their current level of accomplishment. The conversation that followed covered practical matters of scheduling and expectations, the reality of what serious dance training would require from both the twins and their father. There would be classes 3 times per week to start, with additional rehearsal time required as performance opportunities arose. The twins would need proper dance attire and shoes, items that represented a significant expense for the Martinez family budget, but were considered essential for safety and proper instruction. Transportation to and from the center would fall to David, adding another layer of complexity to his already demanding schedule of work and single parenthood. But perhaps most significantly, Catherine explained that acceptance into the program would mean joining a community of serious young artists who had been training for years in some cases, students who might initially view the twins as outsiders despite their obvious natural talent. The social dynamics of competitive dance could be challenging even for children from families with extensive arts backgrounds, and Maya and Sophie would need to develop resilience and confidence to navigate an environment where technical proficiency was expected rather than celebrated as unusual. The twins listened to these explanations with the serious attention they brought to everything that truly mattered to them, asking questions that revealed both their excitement about the opportunities being described and their realistic understanding of the challenges they would face. They wanted to know whether they would always dance together, or if they might sometimes be required to work independently, whether there would be opportunities to choreograph their own pieces, whether their father would be welcome at rehearsals and performances, or if this would become a part of their lives that they experienced separately from him. David found himself moved by his daughter's thoughtful questions and Catherine's patient answers, recognizing that this conversation was about much more than dance instruction. They were discussing the possibility of opening doors that had always seemed closed to families like theirs, opportunities that might lead to scholarships and higher education and careers that had previously existed only in imagination. But they were also talking about sacrifices and commitments and the possibility that pursuing excellence might require leaving behind some of the simple pleasures that had sustained them through their most difficult times. The decision, when it finally came, felt both inevitable and terrifying in its implications for their family's future. Maya and Sophie looked at each other with the silent communication that had guided them through every significant moment of their young lives, then turned to their father with expressions that made their desire unmistakably clear. They wanted to dance, to learn, to grow into whatever they might become with proper guidance and dedicated effort. They understood the costs and were willing to pay them, trusting that their father would find a way to make the impossible possible as he had so many times before. David's acceptance of Catherine's offer came with conditions of his own, stipulations that revealed his protective instincts and his determination to ensure that his daughter's artistic development would not come at the expense of their emotional well-being or academic progress. He wanted regular communication about their progress and any concerns that might arise, the right to withdraw them from the program if it proved too demanding or stressful, and assurance that they would be treated with the same respect and consideration afforded to students from more privileged backgrounds. Catherine agreed to these conditions with the understanding that came from years of working with families facing similar challenges, recognizing that David's protectiveness was born from love rather than mistrust. She explained that the success of the program depended on creating an environment where all students could thrive regardless of their family circumstances, and that the twins' presence would actually enrich the experience for everyone involved. By bringing different perspectives and experiences to the collaborative process of learning and creating art, the paperwork that formalized the twins' acceptance into the program felt surreal in David's hands, official documents that represented a level of opportunity he had never imagined would be available to his family. As he signed his name on the various forms and releases, he thought about Alina and how proud she would have been to see their daughters taking this crucial step toward developing the gifts she had recognized and nurtured during her brief time with them. This was what she would have wanted, not just survival, but the chance to flourish and create beauty in a world that often seemed determined to crush such aspirations. The twins' first official dance class was scheduled for the following Tuesday evening, a date that seemed both impossibly far away and frighteningly soon, depending on the moment and perspective. David spent the intervening days making practical arrangements for transportation and childcare, adjusting his work schedule to accommodate the new demands on their time, and shopping for the dance attire that Catherine had specified as necessary for proper instruction. Each purchase felt like an investment in a future he could barely imagine, money spent on faith rather than certainty. Maya and Sophie practiced constantly during those days of anticipation, transforming every available space in their small apartment into a dance studio where they could work on the basic positions and movements they remembered from their brief audition experience. They watched instructional videos on David's old laptop, trying to decode the technical vocabulary that would soon become part of their daily language, and discussed their hopes and fears with the intense focus they brought to everything that truly mattered to them. The night before their first class, the Martinez family gathered in their living room for what had become an informal tradition of sharing music and movement as a way of staying connected to each other and to Elena's memory. But tonight there was an additional layer of significance to their familiar ritual, a sense that they were saying goodbye to one phase of their lives and preparing to enter another that would challenge and change them in ways they could not yet fully comprehend. David watched his daughters dance with the bittersweet knowledge that their childhood innocence was about to be complicated by the realities of serious artistic training, but also with the deep satisfaction of knowing that he had found a way to give them something precious that might otherwise have remained forever out of reach. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter in their story, one written in the language of discipline and dedication and dreams large enough to justify the sacrifices required to pursue them. As the twins settled into their beds that night, their excitement barely contained by the necessity of sleep, David stood in their doorway and offered a silent prayer to whatever forces had brought Catherine Wells into their lives at exactly the moment when they were ready to receive what she offered. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it would be theirs to take together, and that was more than enough reason to believe that whatever came next would be worth the courage required to embrace it. The Knowbrook Community Arts Center hummed with evening activity as families arrived for classes across multiple disciplines, the converted warehouse alive with the sounds of piano scales, vocal exercises, and the rhythmic thump of dancers finding their footing on sprung floors. Maya and Sophie Martinez stood in the main corridor with their father, clutching new dance bags that still smelled of the store where David had purchased them just hours earlier. Their matching leotards and tights felt foreign against their skin, official uniforms that marked their transition from children who danced for joy in their living room to students who would be held to standards they had never encountered before. The other families moving through the hallway carried themselves with the casual confidence of people for whom arts education was a natural extension of childhood rather than an extraordinary opportunity. Mothers discussed carpools and recital dates with the easy familiarity of shared experience, while fathers compared notes about competition schedules and summer intensive programs that represented levels of commitment David was only beginning to understand. Maya and Sophie observed these interactions with the careful attention of anthropologists studying a foreign culture, trying to decode the unspoken rules that governed this new world they were entering. Studio C had been designated for the intermediate youth ballet class that would serve as the twins' introduction to formal dance training, a space that seemed impossibly large and bright after the cramped confines of their apartment living room. Mirrors lined 3 walls from floor to ceiling, creating infinite reflections that could be either inspiring or intimidating depending on the viewer's perspective. Bars ran along the mirrored walls at various heights to accommodate students of different ages, and the specialized flooring beneath their feet felt springy and responsive in ways that would protect their developing bodies during hours of repetitive movement. Catherine Wells entered the studio with the purposeful stride of someone who had spent decades moving through such spaces, her hair pulled back in a neat bun that emphasized the elegant line of her neck and shoulders. She wore the standard black leotard and wrap skirt that served as uniform for serious dance instructors, her feet encased in soft leather shoes that made no sound as she crossed the floor. The other students responded to her presence with immediate attention, their casual chatter fading into respectful silence as they recognized the authority that came not from her position but from her mastery of the art form they were gathered to study. The twins found themselves positioned at the bar between Jessica Morrison, a 10-year-old who had been dancing since she was 3 and carried herself with the unconscious superiority of early expertise, and Marcus Thompson, an 8-year-old boy whose natural athleticism translated into dance with surprising grace despite his obvious discomfort with being surrounded by predominantly female classmates. Maya and Sophie had expected to feel out of place among students with years of formal training, but they were unprepared for the subtle ways that class dynamics would make their newcomer status feel like a chasm that might never be bridged. Catherine began the class with a brief warm-up that revealed the vast differences in technical preparation among her students, movements that felt natural and fluid for some while requiring intense concentration from others, who were still learning to coordinate their limbs according to classical principles. Maya and Sophie found themselves struggling with vocabulary they had never heard before, French terms that describe positions and movements with precision that left no room for the intuitive interpretation that had guided their previous dancing experiences. Their bodies wanted to move in the flowing, connected way that came naturally to them, but formal ballet demanded a different kind of discipline that felt artificial and constraining. The bar work that formed the foundation of every ballet class proved particularly challenging for twins who had never been required to hold their bodies in such specific alignment for extended periods. Catherine moved through the studio with the watchful eye of a master teacher, offering gentle corrections and encouragement to students who were clearly struggling while maintaining the standards that would ultimately benefit everyone involved. Her touch was light but authoritative as she adjusted the twins' arm positions and helped them understand how proper technique would eventually make their dancing both safer and more expressive. Jessica Morrison observed the twins' struggles with the barely concealed satisfaction of someone whose own expertise felt more secure when contrasted with obvious inexperience. She had grown up in a world where dance ability translated directly into social status, where the number of years spent in training and the level of technical proficiency achieved determined one's place in carefully maintained hierarchies. The Martinez twins represented a disruption to these established orders, talented newcomers whose natural gifts might eventually challenge the supremacy that Jessica had worked years to establish and maintain. But Marcus Thompson found himself drawn to the twins' obvious frustration and determination, recognizing in their struggle something of his own experience as one of the few boys in a predominantly female environment. He had endured years of teasing from classmates who questioned his masculinity for choosing dance over traditional sports, and he understood the isolation that came from pursuing something that others viewed as strange or inappropriate. During a brief water break, he approached Maya and Sophie with shy encouragement, sharing his own memories of feeling lost and inadequate during his first months of formal training. The center portion of class moved the students away from the bars and into the open floor space where they would work on combinations that required them to travel through space while maintaining the technical principles they had practiced in stationary positions. This was where the twins' natural sense of rhythm and spatial awareness began to assert itself more clearly, their bodies finding ways to interpret Catherine's instructions that honored both the classical requirements and their own instinctive understanding of how movement could express emotion and tell stories without words. Catherine recognized the shift in the twins' confidence as they began to trust their body's wisdom while still working to incorporate the technical elements she was teaching. This was the moment she had been waiting for, when students stopped fighting their natural tendencies and began to understand how proper training could enhance rather than constrain their individual gifts. Maya and Sophie moved through the traveling combinations with increasing fluidity, their synchronization creating visual poetry that impressed even Jessica Morrison despite her determination to maintain her superior status. The final section of class focused on learning a short choreographed piece that would be performed at the center's Winter Showcase, an annual event that provided students with performance experience while demonstrating to the community the value of arts education. Catherine had chosen music that would allow for both technical display and emotional expression, a piece that could accommodate dancers at various skill levels, while still challenging everyone to grow beyond their current abilities. The prospect of performing in front of an audience both excited and terrified the twins, who remembered their spontaneous school hallway dance but had never attempted to recreate that magic within the structure of formal choreography. As the hour-long class drew to a close, Maya and Sophie found themselves exhausted in ways they had never experienced through their casual dancing at home. Every muscle in their bodies ached from the effort of maintaining proper alignment and executing movements with precision rather than simply following their impulses. Their minds felt equally taxed from the constant mental effort required to remember combinations, respond to corrections, and navigate the social dynamics of a group environment where their outsider status was obvious to everyone present. David waited in the parent observation area that adjoined the studio, watching through large windows as his daughters navigated this new challenge with the determination that had carried them through every difficulty they had previously encountered. He could see their frustration when movements felt awkward and unnatural, but he also recognized the moments when their natural talent shone through the technical requirements and created something beautiful despite their inexperience. The pride he felt in their willingness to persist through difficulty was tempered by concern about whether this environment would ultimately nurture or diminish the joy they found in dancing. The drive home was quieter than usual as the twins processed their first encounter with formal dance instruction. Their excitement about the opportunity mixed with honest acknowledgement of how much they had to learn before they could consider themselves true dancers rather than simply children who enjoyed moving to music. Maya confessed to feeling clumsy and slow compared to students who had been training for years, while Sophie worried that they might never be able to master the French vocabulary that seemed to come so naturally to their classmates. David listened to their concerns with the patient attention of a father who understood that growing often involved temporary feelings of inadequacy, reassuring them that every expert had once been a beginner and that their natural gifts would serve them well as they developed the technical skills to support their artistic instincts. He reminded them of how their spontaneous performance had affected their school audience, proof that they possessed something valuable that could not be taught but only refined through proper training and dedicated practice. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm for the Martinez family, with Tuesday and Thursday evenings devoted to ballet class and Saturday mornings reserved for the modern dance sessions that Catherine had suggested would complement the twins' classical training while allowing more room for the creative expression that came naturally to them. David rearranged his work schedule to accommodate these commitments, leaving the auto shop early on class days and making up the lost hours during lunch breaks and weekend shifts that left him exhausted but determined to provide whatever his daughters needed to succeed. The financial strain of dance training became evident in ways both large and small, from the obvious costs of proper shoes and clothing to the unexpected expenses of hair accessories and performance makeup that other families seemed to take for granted. David found himself calculating the cost of every purchase against his limited budget, sometimes choosing between groceries and dance necessities in ways that reminded him daily of the sacrifices required to pursue dreams that had previously seemed impossibly out of reach. But he also saw the transformation in his daughter's confidence and carriage, changes that convinced him that these sacrifices were investments in futures he could not yet fully imagine. Maya and Sophie threw themselves into their training with the fierce dedication that had characterized their approach to every challenge they had faced together, staying after regular classes to practice difficult combinations and arriving early to warm up their bodies for the physical demands of formal instruction. They studied dance videos on David's laptop with the intensity of scholars preparing for crucial examinations, trying to decode the technical principles that would allow them to execute movements with the precision their teachers expected. The social dynamics of their new environment proved more complex than the twins had anticipated, with hierarchies based on years of training, family connections to the dance world, and subtle markers of economic status that determined which students were considered serious prospects for advanced study. Jessica Morrison maintained her position as the unofficial leader of their age group. Her technical proficiency and family's long-standing relationship with the center, giving her influence over which newcomers would be accepted into the established social order and which would remain perpetual outsiders. But Marcus Thompson's early friendship with the twins gradually expanded to include other students who recognized their work ethic and natural ability, creating a small support network of young dancers who valued effort and improvement over social status and family background. These alliances formed slowly and carefully, tested through shared struggles in challenging classes, and cemented through the mutual support that sustained all of them through moments of doubt and frustration. Catherine Wells observed these developing relationships with the experienced eye of someone who understood that technical training was only part of what young dancers needed to succeed in an art form that demanded both individual excellence and collaborative creativity. She made subtle adjustments to class structure and choreographic assignments that encouraged cooperation over competition, pairing stronger students with those who needed additional support in ways that benefited everyone involved while building the kind of community that would sustain them through years of increasingly demanding training. The twins' progress accelerated as their bodies adapted to the physical requirements of formal dance training, and their minds began to organize movement according to classical principles that enhanced rather than constrained their natural expressiveness. Catherine noted improvements in their extension and control, the way they held their heads with growing confidence, and most importantly, their increasing ability to translate emotional impulses into technically sound movement that communicated with audiences on multiple levels simultaneously. The announcement of winter showcase auditions created a buzz of excitement and anxiety throughout the center as students prepared to compete for featured roles in the annual performance that would demonstrate their progress to families and community members. Maya and Sophie had been attending classes for only 6 weeks, making them among the newest students to attempt such a public demonstration of their developing skills. But Catherine encouraged them to audition, recognizing that performance experience would accelerate their growth in ways that classroom instruction alone could never achieve. The audition process revealed the full extent of the center's internal hierarchies as students vied for solo opportunities and prominent ensemble positions that would showcase their individual talents to maximum advantage. Jessica Morrison arrived with a prepared variation that demonstrated years of technical training, her execution polished and confident in ways that reminded everyone present of the advantages that came with early and continuous instruction. Other established students performed pieces that had been coached by private teachers, movements refined through countless hours of individual attention that most families considered a normal part of serious dance education. Maya and Sophie found themselves auditioning with a piece they had created together, a brief choreography that combined elements of their classical training with the natural movement vocabulary that had emerged from years of dancing in their living room. Their performance lacked the technical polish of their more experienced peers, but it possessed an emotional authenticity and creative spark that caught Catherine's attention and reminded her why she had invited them into the program despite their lack of formal preparation. The casting results posted several days later reflected Catherine's commitment to providing performance opportunities for students at all levels, while maintaining the artistic standards that made the showcase a meaningful demonstration of the center's educational mission. Maya and Sophie were assigned prominent roles in an ensemble piece that would allow them to showcase their synchronization and natural stage presence. while supporting them with more experienced dancers who could help guide them through their first formal performance experience. Jessica Morrison found herself cast in a featured solo that acknowledged her technical superiority while also challenging her to bring more emotional depth to the movement that sometimes felt mechanically perfect but artistically cold. The role required her to work closely with the twins during ensemble sections, a collaboration that would test her ability to support other dancers rather than simply commanding attention through individual excellence. Rehearsals began immediately with an intensity that surprised even students who had participated in previous showcase productions. Catherine pushing everyone to exceed their current limitations while building the ensemble cohesion that would make the final performance greater than the sum of its individual parts. The twins found themselves working harder than they had ever worked at anything, their muscles aching and their minds exhausted from the constant effort required to memorize choreography, while maintaining technical standards that demanded precision in every gesture. The rehearsal process also revealed the depth of commitment required from families who supported serious dance students, with parents expected to provide transportation to additional rehearsals, assist with costume preparation, and volunteer for various production tasks that made the showcase possible. David found himself learning about theatrical makeup and costume construction, skills he had never imagined needing but approached with the same methodical determination he brought to mechanical problems at the auto shop. The relationship between Maya and Sophie began to evolve during these weeks of intensive preparation as they discovered that formal training required individual growth as well as their accustomed collaborative approach to challenges. They were learning to dance together in new ways that honored their natural synchronization, while allowing each of them to develop personal strengths and preferences that had been submerged in their previous practice of moving as a single unit. Divided into two bodies, Maya found herself drawn to the dramatic possibilities of dance, discovering that her natural intensity could be channeled into movement that told stories and conveyed complex emotions without words. Sophie gravitated toward the pure joy of movement itself, her lighter temperament expressing itself through dancing that celebrated the simple pleasure of bodies moving through space in harmony with music and other dancers. These emerging differences enriched rather than threatened their partnership, adding layers of complexity to their performances that made them more interesting to watch and more satisfying to execute. Catherine worked with both twins individually during this period, recognizing that their rapid progress required personalized attention that could address their specific needs and challenges, while building on the unique gifts each brought to the art form. These private coaching sessions became opportunities for deeper instruction in both technical principles and artistic development, conversations about the history and philosophy of dance that connected their current work to centuries of human expression through movement. The weeks leading up to the showcase performance passed in a blur of rehearsals and costume fittings, final adjustments to choreography, and last-minute technical rehearsals that tested everyone's ability to maintain focus under pressure. Maya and Sophie found themselves sleeping more deeply than they had in months, their bodies exhausted from the physical demands of intensive training, but their minds energized by the creative challenges that pushed them to discover new possibilities within themselves. David watched his daughter's transformation with amazement and growing concern, recognizing that their commitment to dance was becoming something more than a hobby or even a serious extracurricular activity. They were developing the intense focus and physical discipline that characterized professional artists, changes that he celebrated even as he worried about the pressures and sacrifices that such dedication would require from all of them in the years ahead. The final dress rehearsal took place on a Thursday evening with full costumes, lighting, and technical elements that would be used for the actual performance, giving students their first experience of how their dancing would look and feel in the theatrical environment that awaited them. Maya and Sophie performed their ensemble piece with a confidence that surprised even Catherine. Their months of training evident in every gesture as they moved through space with the precision and artistry that separated trained dancers from enthusiastic amateurs. The showcase performance itself was scheduled for Saturday evening, an event that would mark not just the culmination of months of preparation, but also a crucial test of whether the twins' natural gifts could translate into success within the formal structures of competitive dance education. David had invited Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Henderson from Jefferson Elementary, teachers who had witnessed the twins' transformation from victims of bullying into confident young artists, along with several neighbors and co-workers who had supported the family through their various struggles and celebrations. As Saturday afternoon arrived with its mixture of excitement and nervousness, Maya and Sophie found themselves preparing for what felt like the most important performance of their young lives, an opportunity to demonstrate not just what they had learned during their brief time at the Community Arts Center, but also their potential for future growth and artistic development. The stage that awaited them represented possibilities they were only beginning to understand, dreams that were large enough to justify every sacrifice their family had made to reach this moment of truth and transformation. The Millbrook Community Theater buzzed with pre-performance energy as families filed into the restored 1920s venue that served as the showcase space for the Arts Center's annual winter presentation. Red velvet seats filled gradually with parents, grandparents, and community members who had come to witness months of dedicated training transformed into artistic expression under the warm glow of professional stage lighting. David Martinez adjusted his tie nervously as he found his reserved seat in the third row, the formal clothing feeling foreign after years of work uniforms and casual weekend wear. But he had wanted to mark this occasion with the respect it deserved. Maya and Sophie stood in the wings with their fellow performers, their matching costumes shimmering under the backstage lights as they performed final stretches and mental rehearsals of the choreography that had consumed their thoughts for weeks. The deep purple leotards with flowing chiffon skirts had been provided by the Arts Center's costume department, garments that transformed the twins from students into performers while maintaining the professional standards that Catherine Wells insisted upon for all public presentations of her students' work. The backstage area pulsed with controlled chaos as dancers of all ages prepared for their moments in the spotlight, older students helping younger ones with final costume adjustments, while instructors moved through the crowd offering last-minute encouragement and technical reminders. Maya felt her stomach flutter with nervous energy that was entirely different from the fear she had experienced during their playground confrontation with Ashley Chun, this anxiety born from anticipation rather than dread, excitement rather than terror. Sophie found herself observing the other performers with newfound appreciation for the diverse talents that had been developing alongside their own during months of shared classes and rehearsals. Marcus Thompson adjusted his bow tie with the careful precision of someone who had learned to take pride in his appearance despite years of teasing about his participation in an activity that others considered inappropriate for boys. Jessica Morrison checked her pointe shoe ribbons one final time, her pre-performance ritual completed with the methodical attention to detail that characterized everything she did in the studio. Catherine Wells moved through the backstage area with the calm authority of someone who had guided countless students through their first major performance experiences, offering specific reminders about timing and spacing, while radiating the confidence that would help her dancers trust their preparation when the curtain rose. She paused beside Maya and Sophie to adjust their hair accessories and remind them to breathe deeply, to trust their bodies and their partnership, to remember that the audience wanted them to succeed rather than fail. The opening number featured the center's most advanced students in a classical ballet piece that demonstrated the highest level of technical training available through the program, movements that flowed with the effortless precision that came from years of dedicated study. Under expert guidance, David watched from his seat with growing amazement as young dancers executed complex combinations with professional polish, their bodies telling stories through gesture and line that spoke to possibilities he had never imagined for his own daughters. Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Henderson sat nearby, the elementary school teachers who had witnessed the twins' transformation from bullied outcasts to confident young artists, now preparing to see the next chapter in their students' remarkable journey. They had brought several other faculty members who had heard about the Martinez family's story, educators who understood the power of the arts to change lives and wanted to support students who had overcome significant obstacles to pursue their dreams. The program progressed through various age groups and dance styles, each piece showcasing different aspects of the comprehensive training that the Community Arts Center provided to students from diverse backgrounds and economic circumstances. A jazz number performed by the intermediate students brought infectious energy to the theater, while a contemporary piece by the advanced group explored themes of growth and change that resonated with audience members who had watched these young dancers develop over multiple years of study. Maya and Sophie's ensemble piece was scheduled for the second half of the program, positioned to allow them maximum time for final preparation while ensuring that their performance would be seen by an audience that had been warmed up by earlier numbers. They stood in the wings watching their fellow students perform, absorbing the energy and excitement that filled the theater while mentally rehearsing their own choreography one final time. The costume change required for their piece involved adding flowing scarves that would extend their arm lines and create visual poetry. As they moved through the choreography Catherine had created specifically to showcase their natural synchronization, while challenging them to demonstrate the technical progress they had made during their months of training. The fabric felt light and responsive in their hands, an extension of their bodies that would amplify every gesture and make their dancing visible even to audience members in the farthest rows. As their entrance music began, Maya and Sophie exchanged a look that communicated years of shared experience and mutual support, the silent conversation that had sustained them through every challenge they had faced together. They walked onto the stage with the confidence that came from thorough preparation and genuine excitement about sharing their art with people who cared about their success, their movements already flowing with the music before the choreography had officially begun. The opening moments of their performance established the dreamy, ethereal quality that Catherine had envisioned for the piece, the twins moving through space, like reflections of each other while maintaining the individual expression that had emerged during their months of formal training. Their scarves caught the stage lights and created shifting patterns of color and shadow that enhanced the visual impact of their dancing, while requiring precise timing and spatial awareness that demonstrated their growing technical sophistication. David watched from his seat with emotions that ranged from pride to amazement to a deep gratitude that threatened to overwhelm his careful composure. These were his daughters on stage, the little girls he had raised alone through years of struggle and uncertainty, now transformed into artists who commanded attention through the power of their talent and dedication. Every sacrifice he had made to support their dancing felt justified in this moment of triumph and beauty. The middle section of the choreography featured a sequence where Maya and Sophie danced apart before coming together in a series of partnering elements that showcased their natural ability to share space and create visual harmony through coordinated movement. This was where their unique gifts were most evident, the intuitive communication that allowed them to move as one while maintaining their individual artistic voices, a quality that could not be taught, but only refined through proper training and performance experience. Jessica Morrison watched from the wings with feelings that surprised her in their complexity, her initial resentment of the twins' natural talent gradually giving way to appreciation for their work ethic and artistic sincerity. She had spent years believing that technical proficiency was the only measure of a dancer's worth, but watching Maya and Sophie perform with such emotional authenticity forced her to reconsider what it meant to be truly excellent in an art form that demanded both physical skill and spiritual truth. The climactic moments of the twins, performance built to a finale that combined everything they had learned about classical technique with the natural expressiveness that had first caught Catherine's attention during their school hallway dance. They moved through a series of traveling jumps and turns that required precise timing and considerable physical strength, their scarves creating trails of color that lingered in the air like visual echoes of their movements. As the music reached its conclusion, Maya and Sophie came to rest in a final pose that seemed to suspend time itself, their bodies perfectly aligned and their faces radiant with the joy that came from dancing at the edge of their abilities while trusting completely in their partnership and preparation. The silence that followed lasted only seconds before the audience erupted in applause that acknowledged not just the beauty of what they had witnessed but also the remarkable journey that had brought these young dancers to this moment of artistic triumph. David found himself on his feet along with most of the audience, applauding with an intensity that expressed months of worry and hope and pride, finally released in a single moment of celebration. Mrs. Patterson wiped tears from her eyes as she remembered the frightened children who had hidden in school hallways just months earlier, while Mr. Henderson shook his head in amazement at the transformation he had witnessed in students he thought he had understood completely. The twins took their bows with the grace that had become second nature through months of training, their smiles genuine and unguarded as they acknowledged the appreciation of an audience that had shared their artistic journey for the past few minutes. They could see their father in the third row, his face reflecting every emotion they were feeling, magnified by the love and sacrifice that had made this moment possible. Catherine Wells watched from the wings with the satisfaction of a teacher who had recognized potential and provided the guidance necessary to help it flourish, but also with the awareness that this performance marked a beginning rather than an ending in the twins' artistic development. They had demonstrated their readiness for more advanced training and greater challenges, opportunities that would require continued sacrifice and dedication from their entire family. The remainder of the showcase featured the center's most advanced students in pieces that demonstrated the highest levels of achievement possible within the program, performances that revealed the dedication required to excel in competitive dance, while maintaining the joy and artistic integrity that had drawn each student to the art form initially. Maya and Sophie watched from the wings with newfound understanding of the commitment that lay ahead if they chose to pursue dance seriously beyond their current level of study. The closing number brought all the students together on stage for a final bow that celebrated not just individual achievements, but also the community that had been built through shared dedication to artistic excellence and mutual support. Maya and Sophie found themselves standing between Marcus Thompson and Jessica Morrison, their relationships with both students having evolved through months of working together toward common goals that transcended their initial differences in background and experience. As the curtain fell and the audience began to disperse, the backstage area filled with families, congratulating their young dancers and instructors who had guided them through months of preparation for this culminating experience. David made his way backstage to find his daughters, surrounded by well-wishers who wanted to express their appreciation for the beauty and authenticity of their performance. Mrs. Patterson approached the Martinez family with tears still visible in her eyes, expressing her amazement at the transformation she had witnessed in students who had faced such significant challenges just months earlier. She had brought other teachers from Jefferson Elementary who wanted to understand how the arts could play such a powerful role in building confidence and providing positive outlets for students who might otherwise struggle to find their place in traditional academic environments. Catherine Wells found David in the crowd and pulled him aside for a conversation that would prove crucial to the twins' future artistic development. She explained that Maya and Sophie had demonstrated readiness for more intensive training that would require additional time and financial commitment, but could also open doors to opportunities that were currently impossible to imagine. There were summer intensive programs, regional competitions, and eventually the possibility of scholarship auditions for prestigious dance schools that could provide pathways to professional careers. The conversation that followed covered practical matters of scheduling and expense, but also deeper questions about the family's long-term goals and the twins' own desires as they began to understand what serious dance training would require from them in the years ahead. David listened with the careful attention of someone who had learned to weigh opportunities against resources while always prioritizing his daughter's well-being and happiness above external measures of success. Maya and Sophie joined the conversation with questions that revealed their growing sophistication about the dance world and their realistic understanding of what continued progress would demand from them. They wanted to know about the other students who had advanced through the program to higher levels of training, whether it was possible to maintain their close partnership while also developing individual strengths, and how they could continue improving during the months between formal sessions. The drive home from the theater was filled with excited conversation as the twins processed their first major performance experience and began to imagine what might be possible if they continued pursuing dance with the same dedication they had brought to their initial months of training. They talked about the other dancers they had met, the technical elements they wanted to master, and the stories they hoped to tell through their movement in future performances. David listened to their enthusiasm with feelings that ranged from pride to concern, recognizing that their success had opened doors that would require careful navigation in the months and years ahead. The financial implications of continued intensive training were significant for a family operating on his auto mechanic salary, but he also understood that denying his daughters the opportunity to develop their obvious talents would represent a different kind of failure that he could not accept. The weeks following the showcase brought a flood of interest from community members who had witnessed the twins' performance and wanted to support their continued artistic development. Local businesses offered sponsorship opportunities, while individual donors stepped forward with contributions that could help offset the costs of more intensive training. The Martinez family found themselves at the center of a community effort that recognized artistic talent as something worth nurturing regardless of economic circumstances. The twins returned to their regular classes with renewed enthusiasm and deeper understanding of what they were working toward. Their movements, informed by the confidence that came from successful performance experience and the knowledge that their hard work was producing visible results. They approached technical exercises with greater focus, understanding how each element contributed to their overall development as dancers and performers. Jessica Morrison's attitude toward Maya and Sophie had shifted significantly following the showcase, her initial resentment replaced by respect for their work ethic and natural ability. She began offering advice about technique and performance presence, sharing insights gained through years of training while learning from the twins' intuitive approach to movement and emotional expression. These developing friendships created a more supportive environment for all the students as they worked toward their individual and collective goals. Marcus Thompson found himself part of a small group of serious young dancers who supported each other through the challenges of intensive training while maintaining the joy and creativity that had drawn them to dance initially. His friendship with the twins had evolved beyond their shared status as outsiders to a genuine appreciation for their unique gifts and dedicated approach to improvement. Catherine Wells began working with Maya and Sophie on more advanced technical elements that would prepare them for the next level of training, movements that required greater strength, flexibility, and coordination than anything they had attempted previously. These private coaching sessions became opportunities for accelerated learning that took advantage of their natural abilities while building the foundation of knowledge and skill that would support their continued development. The spring semester brought opportunities for Masterclasses with visiting artists who could provide different perspectives on technique and performance, exposing the twins to approaches and styles that expanded their understanding of what dance could be and do. These experiences were both inspiring and humbling, revealing the depth of knowledge and skill that existed within the professional dance world while confirming that they possessed the fundamental qualities necessary to pursue excellence at higher levels. Regional competition opportunities began to appear on the horizon, events that would allow Maya and Sophie to test their abilities against students from other schools and programs while gaining experience performing under pressure in environments designed to evaluate and rank artistic achievement. Catherine recommended approaching these opportunities carefully, using them as learning experiences rather than measures of worth, but also acknowledging that successful competition could open doors to scholarships and training programs that might otherwise remain inaccessible. David found himself learning about a world he had never imagined entering, studying the landscapes of professional dance training and career development with the same methodical approach he brought to mechanical problems. He researched summer intensive programs, scholarship opportunities, and the academic requirements that would allow his daughters to pursue dance while maintaining the educational foundation necessary for whatever future they ultimately chose. The twins' academic performance at Jefferson Elementary had improved significantly since they began dance training, their increased confidence and focus carrying over into classroom settings, where they now participated actively in discussions and collaborative projects. Their teachers noted improvements in posture, attention span, and social skills that seemed directly related to their artistic development and the positive community they had found at the Art Center. Ashley Chun had largely disappeared from the twins' daily experience, her previous power to hurt them neutralized by their growing confidence and expanding circle of supportive relationships. The social dynamics that had once made school a place of fear and humiliation had been transformed through their artistic success and the recognition it brought from adults and peers who valued talent and dedication over superficial markers of status. As spring turned toward summer, Maya and Sophie faced decisions about how to spend the break from regular classes, whether to attend intensive programs that would accelerate their training or to take time for rest and other activities that might refresh their enthusiasm for dance while preventing burnout. Catherine advised a balanced approach that would challenge them artistically while preserving the joy and creativity that made their dancing special. The community support that had emerged following their showcase performance had grown into a formal scholarship fund that would help offset the costs of continued training for talented students from families who might not otherwise be able to afford intensive dance education. Maya and Sophie found themselves among the first recipients of this support, recognition that their success represented possibilities for other young artists facing similar challenges and circumstances. David looked toward the future with cautious optimism, understanding that his daughters had been given extraordinary opportunities that would require continued sacrifice and dedication from their entire family. The auto shop where he worked had become increasingly supportive of his need for flexible scheduling, his employer recognizing that David's commitment to his daughters' education reflected the same reliability and dedication that made him valuable as an employee. The twins' relationship with each other had evolved through their shared dance training, their natural closeness enhanced by the challenges they had faced and overcome together, while also allowing space for individual growth and artistic development. They remained best friends and creative partners, but they were also becoming distinct artists with their own strengths, preferences, and dreams for the future. As summer approached with its promises of intensive training and new challenges, Maya and Sophie Martinez stood at the threshold of possibilities that had seemed impossible just months earlier when they were frightened children hiding from bullies in school hallways. Their journey from victims to artists had been supported by their father's unwavering love, Catherine's expert guidance, and a community that had chosen to invest in their potential rather than dismiss it because of their family's economic circumstances. The stage that awaited them in future performances would be larger and more demanding than anything they had yet experienced. But they would approach it with the confidence that came from having already transformed themselves once through courage, dedication, and the unshakable belief that beauty could emerge from struggle when nurtured by love and supported by those who recognized its value and potential for inspiring others to reach beyond their current limitations, toward dreams that were large, enough to justify every sacrifice required to achieve them. The summer intensive program at the prestigious Whitmore Academy of Dance represented everything Maya and Sophie Martinez had never dared to dream possible during their months of hiding. From bullies in elementary school hallways, the sprawling campus nestled in the mountains 3 hours from Millbrook buzzed with young dancers from across the region, their technique honed through years of elite training that had prepared them for this competitive environment where only the most dedicated and talented students earned acceptance. David Martinez drove his weathered pickup truck through the academy gates with a mixture of pride and anxiety that had become familiar during the months since his daughter's artistic abilities had opened doors to opportunities he was still learning to navigate. The scholarship fund established by their community had covered tuition and housing costs for the 6-week program, but the emotional investment required from their family felt immeasurable as he prepared to leave Maya and Sophie in an environment designed to push them beyond their current limitations. The dormitory that would house the twins for the duration of their intensive training stood 3 stories tall with ivy-covered walls that spoke to decades of artistic tradition and excellence. Students moved through the corridors with the confident bearing of young people accustomed to high expectations and demanding schedules, their conversations peppered with technical vocabulary and references to professional companies and famous choreographers that represented the pinnacle of achievement in their chosen field. Maya and Sophie carried their simple suitcases up the stairs to their shared room with the quiet determination that had sustained them through every challenge they had faced together. But David could see uncertainty in their eyes as they observed classmates whose expensive dance bags and casual mentions of private coaching revealed backgrounds vastly different from their own. The democratizing power of talent had earned them a place at this elite institution, but social dynamics would prove more complex than any audition requirements. Catherine Wells had prepared them as thoroughly as possible for the intensity of training they would encounter, explaining that 6 weeks of 8-hour daily classes would compress years of normal instruction into an experience designed to identify students with professional potential, while weeding out those who lacked the physical and mental stamina required for career-level dance training. The daily schedule posted on their dormitory bulletin board looked intimidating even to twins, who had grown accustomed to challenging themselves beyond their comfort zones. The first morning began before dawn with conditioning classes that tested every muscle group while building the strength and flexibility that would support increasingly demanding technical requirements. Maya found herself struggling with exercises that seemed routine for students who had been training intensively for years, while Sophie discovered that her natural lightness translated into advantages for certain movements while creating challenges in others that required more grounded power and control. Master classes with renowned faculty revealed the vast differences in preparation among students who had all earned their places through competitive auditions, some demonstrating technical mastery that seemed almost superhuman, while others showed gaps in their training that would require months of focused work to address. Maya and Sophie found themselves somewhere in the middle of this spectrum, their natural gifts evident, but their formal training clearly less extensive than many of their peers. The social environment proved as challenging as the physical demands, with hierarchies based on home studios, competition results, and family connections to the professional dance world, creating invisible but powerful divisions among students who were supposed to be collaborating in their artistic development. Some classmates welcomed the twins with genuine warmth, recognizing their work ethic and authentic love of dancing, while others maintained polite distance that made their outsider status unmistakably clear. Roommate assignments had paired Maya and Sophie with students from established dance families who had attended summer intensives since middle school, young women whose casual familiarity with elite training environments highlighted everything the twins were still learning about. Navigating this competitive world. These relationships developed slowly, built through shared exhaustion and mutual support during the most challenging moments of their daily training regimen. The artistic directors who evaluated student progress throughout the program observed Maya and Sophie with the careful attention of educators who recognized raw talent that had not yet been fully refined through years of systematic training. Their natural synchronization and emotional authenticity distinguished them from technically superior dancers, who sometimes lacked the spark of genuine artistry that could not be taught through even the most expert instruction. David called every evening to check on his daughter's progress and emotional well-being, their conversations revealing both the excitement of intensive learning and the fatigue that came from pushing their bodies and minds to new limits daily. He had taken extra shifts at the auto shop to cover the additional expenses of their summer program, his own sacrifices hidden behind cheerful encouragement that masked his concerns about whether he was providing adequate support for dreams that were growing larger and more expensive with each passing month. The midpoint evaluation process required students to perform prepared pieces for faculty assessment, an opportunity to demonstrate progress while receiving detailed feedback about areas that needed continued development. Maya and Sophie chose to perform a duet they had choreographed themselves, a piece that combined technical elements they had mastered with the natural creativity that distinguished their dancing from more conventional approaches to classical training. Their performance caught the attention of Margaret Stern, the Academy's artistic director and former principal dancer with a major ballet company, who recognized in their work the rare combination of technical promise and artistic authenticity that characterized dancers capable of professional careers. Her feedback session with the twins covered not just immediate areas for improvement, but also long-term development strategies that could help them reach their full potential over the coming years. The conversation that followed would prove pivotal in shaping the twins' future, as Margaret explained the pathways available to serious dance students who demonstrated both talent and dedication sufficient to warrant continued investment in their training. There were year-round pre-professional programs, scholarship opportunities for elite high school training, and ultimately the possibility of company apprenticeships that could lead to professional careers for those willing to commit their lives to the pursuit of artistic excellence. But Margaret also spoke honestly about the sacrifices required for such a path, the physical demands that would only increase with advanced training, the social isolation that often accompanied single-minded dedication to artistic pursuits, and the financial realities of professional dance careers that required careful planning and realistic expectations about long-term earning potential. Her guidance was compassionate, but unflinchingly honest about the challenges that lay ahead for any young dancer considering a serious commitment to the art form. Maya and Sophie absorbed this information with the mature consideration that had characterized their approach to every significant decision they had faced together, understanding that their choice about how far to pursue dance training would affect not just their own futures, but also their father's life and the financial stability of their family. They had learned to weigh dreams against practical realities while refusing to let economic limitations automatically foreclose possibilities that might be achieved through creative solutions and community support. The final weeks of the intensive program included opportunities to work with guest choreographers whose professional credits included major ballet companies and contemporary dance ensembles, exposing students to different approaches and styles while providing networking connections that could prove valuable in future auditions and applications. Maya and Sophie threw themselves into these masterclasses with renewed energy, their confidence growing as they discovered their ability to adapt to various movement vocabularies and artistic sensibilities. The showcase performance that concluded. The summer program provided an opportunity for students to demonstrate their growth while performing for an audience that included family members, dance professionals, and representatives from elite training programs who scouted for potential recruits. David made the 3-hour drive with nervous excitement, understanding that this performance would mark not just the end of his daughter's summer training but also a crucial moment in determining their future direction. The theater at Whitmore Academy had hosted generations of showcase performances, its stage worn smooth by countless young dancers who had used this opportunity to launch professional careers or discover that their talents were better suited to other pursuits. Maya and Sophie prepared for their performance with the ritual focus that had become second nature through months of intensive training, their movements economical and precise as they warmed up their bodies for the demands of live performance. Their piece in the showcase featured choreography that highlighted their natural partnership, while demonstrating the technical progress they had made during 6 weeks of elite instruction, movements that would have been impossible for them to execute just months earlier, but now felt natural and expressive of their growing artistry. The stage lights transformed their simple costumes into something magical, their synchronized dancing creating visual poetry that transcended the individual elements of technique and training. David watched from his seat in the packed theater with emotions that ranged from overwhelming pride to deep gratitude for the community support that had made this moment possible, recognizing that his daughters had been given opportunities that would have remained out of reach without the generosity and belief of people who had chosen to invest in their potential. The applause that greeted their performance spoke to appreciation for both their technical achievement and the authentic joy they brought to their dancing. The reception following the showcase buzzed with conversations about fall auditions, scholarship opportunities, and the various pathways available to students who had demonstrated readiness for more advanced training. Margaret Stern approached the Martinez family with specific recommendations about programs that would best serve Maya and Sophie's continued development, her suggestions revealing the respect she had gained for their work ethic and artistic potential during their weeks of intensive study. The drive home from Whitmore Academy was filled with excited discussion about everything the twins had learned and experienced during their transformative summer, but also with serious conversation about the decisions that lay ahead as they prepared to enter their final year of elementary school. The landscape outside their truck windows gradually shifted from mountain vistas to the familiar rolling hills of home, the contrast highlighting how far they had traveled both literally and figuratively since their days of hiding from playground bullies. The return to Millbrook brought renewed appreciation for the community that had supported their artistic development, but also awareness that their summer training had prepared them for opportunities that might eventually require leaving the town that had nurtured their early growth. David understood that success in competitive dance often demanded geographic mobility that could separate families or require sacrifices that tested the bonds holding them together. Catherine Wells welcomed Maya and Sophie back to the community arts center with curiosity about their experiences and realistic assessment of how their summer training would affect their continued development within her program. The technical progress they had made was immediately evident in their movement quality and spatial awareness, but she also recognized that they had been exposed to possibilities that would require careful navigation to ensure their love of dancing remained intact despite increasing pressures and expectations. The twins returned to Jefferson Elementary for their final year, brought a completely different social dynamic than they had experienced during their early months at the school, their artistic achievements having earned respect from classmates and teachers who now viewed them as examples of what dedicated effort could accomplish despite challenging circumstances. Ashley Chun had moved away during the summer, her family relocating to another state where her father had accepted a new position. removing the primary source of bullying that had once made school a place of fear and humiliation. Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Henderson incorporated the twin story into their teaching, using their transformation as an example of resilience and the power of finding positive outlets for managing difficult emotions and building self-confidence. The arts programs at Jefferson Elementary had expanded significantly since the showcase performance that had first revealed Maya and Sophie's talents. Additional funding secured through community support that recognized the value of creative education for all students. The fall audition season brought opportunities to compete for positions in regional youth ensembles and scholarship programs that could provide pathways to elite high school training. But David insisted that his daughters approach these opportunities as learning experiences rather than measures of their worth as dancers or human beings. The pressure to succeed could easily overwhelm young artists who had not yet developed the emotional maturity to handle rejection and criticism as normal parts of professional development. Maya found herself drawn increasingly to dramatic and contemporary styles that allowed for more personal expression and storytelling through movement, while Sophie gravitated toward the pure technical challenges of classical ballet that satisfied her perfectionist tendencies and desire for precision in every gesture. These emerging preferences suggested that their future training might eventually take them in different directions, while maintaining their core partnership and mutual support. The scholarship fund established by their community had grown significantly through additional donations and fundraising events, providing resources that could support not just Maya and Sophie's continued training, but also opportunities for other young artists facing similar financial obstacles to pursuing their dreams. The twins found themselves serving as ambassadors for arts education, their story inspiring others to believe that talent and dedication could overcome economic limitations when supported by caring communities. David's perspective on his daughters' future had evolved from simply wanting them to be happy and safe to understanding that their exceptional gifts carried responsibilities to develop their talents fully while maintaining the values and relationships that grounded them in something larger than individual achievement. The balance between supporting their dreams and protecting their childhood innocence required constant adjustment as new opportunities and challenges emerged. The winter showcase at the Community Arts Center took on special significance as Maya and Sophie prepared to perform pieces that demonstrated how their summer-intensive training had enhanced their natural abilities while deepening their understanding of what it meant to be serious young artists. Their choreography incorporated technical elements that would have been impossible for them to execute just a year earlier, but the emotional core of their dancing remained, rooted in the joy and partnership that had first caught Catherine's attention. Margaret Stern attended the community showcase as a guest artist and master teacher, her presence lending professional credibility to the event, while providing an opportunity for other local students to work with a teacher of her caliber. Her observations of Maya and Sophie's continued growth confirmed her assessment that they possessed the rare combination of talent, work ethic, and artistic integrity that could sustain professional careers if they chose to pursue such demanding paths. The performance itself marked a full-circle moment for the Martinez family. Their return to the stage where Maya and Sophie had first demonstrated their potential, now featuring dancing that revealed years of growth and development supported by their father's sacrifices and their community's belief in the transformative power of artistic education. The standing ovation that greeted their performance acknowledged not just their technical achievement, but also the inspiration their journey provided to others facing similar challenges and dreams. As the applause faded and the theater lights came up, David found himself reflecting on the remarkable journey that had transformed his daughters from frightened victims of bullying into confident young artists whose talents had opened doors to possibilities he was still learning to navigate. The road ahead would bring new challenges and opportunities that would test their family's resilience and commitment, but the foundation they had built together through love, sacrifice, and unwavering support for each other's dreams felt strong enough to sustain whatever the future might hold. Maya and Sophie took their final bows with the grace and confidence that had become second nature through months of intensive training and performance experience. Their smiles genuine and unguarded as they acknowledged the appreciation of an audience that had shared their artistic journey and witnessed their transformation from playground outcasts to accomplished young dancers whose future possibilities seemed limitless. The story of their growth from bullied children to celebrated artists would continue to inspire others long after the curtain fell, a testament to the power of believing in potential even when it appeared in unexpected forms, and proof that with sufficient love, support, and dedication, dreams that once seemed impossible could indeed become reality for those brave enough to pursue them with everything they had to give. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.